Hello YouTube, and welcome to my Shoot the Bullet All Scenes Compilation Clear video. In this video I have spliced together all of my first clears of each of the scenes of Shoot the Bullet, and since it's my first clear, I won't necessarily have all the best strats. In the first few scenes, as you might have already noticed, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm still getting used to the controls. I played Touhou for many years before this, but the controls in this game are slightly different than the normal Touhou games, so I do promise I will get better. I thought about re-recording some of the earlier scenes, but I wanted to keep it as authentic as possible, and I do find it nice to watch myself improve, and I hope people enjoy watching something like that. Some of you watching might be wondering, what's the deal with this game? Why is it different from a traditional Touhou game, and what's the plot? What's going on? The traditional Touhou games are vertical, auto-scrolling bullet hell shooters. This game very much resembles a bullet hell in the patterns and the amount of bullets, but instead of shooting a stream of your own bullets to kill enemies and fight bosses, you have this photo mechanic, where you charge your camera and try to take pictures of the boss a certain number of times. Also, any bullets that get caught in your picture frame are deleted, hence the title of the game, Shoot the Bullet. Because you're shooting like shooting a photo, and it cancels the bullets. Instead of Zemoo or Marissa, one of our normal heroines, going out to solve an incident, we just have Aya going out to take interesting pictures for her news articles. Here we get to see Rumia use her darkness ability by becoming too dark to take pictures of. It's nice that Zen gets to revisit some of these marginalized characters and give them some more danmaku and expand on their characterization. The game of this episodic, scene-like style benefits a lot from Touhou's large character pool. So you don't have to introduce the characters, and you don't need some plot or story that connects it all through. You just know who the characters are, and you get to see their personalities manifest themselves in their danmaku. A little trivia for you. The reason why Touhou 8 is the first Touhou game that has spell practice, and it's not a evergreen thing in the series, is because Zun only ever developed it as practice for this game, where he needed to have single scene levels that you could select from a menu. It's a shame he didn't make it a consistent thing, because it makes practicing so much easier. I won't be providing constant commentary in this video, just picking my spots here and there where I think commentary is warranted. Earlier I mentioned the controls of this game being slightly different. If you're just starting Touhou or new to it, I would not recommend this game because it's a bit more challenging and a bit harder to get used to the controls. But if you have a little bit of Touhou experience and are looking to level up your game a bit, I would recommend this game. Since this game is basically a spell practice simulator, you have a menu where you can pick a spell card and play it till you capture it. It does a really good job of getting you in the habit of practicing difficult spell cards until you can do them. A big thing you should be trying to do when playing danmaku is practicing the hard parts and not just jamming runs. You will improve so much faster if you just focus on the difficult sections that you can't do. And this game sort of forces you to do that, and hopefully you'll see the benefits you get from practicing the right parts rather than just jamming runs till you get your 1cc. Scene 2-5. This Cherno spells the kind of Danmaku you don't see a ton in normal games, where it makes you spin around the boss. This works a lot better here because if you get insta-gibbed by not realizing you're supposed to spin around the boss, you just get to restart and not a big deal. But if you get deep into a credit of a normal game and you lose a life to it, it's probably a bit more annoying. You see stuff like this sometimes in extra stages like Maze of Love, for instance. It's a really cool design space that isn't used as often as it could be because it's kind of annoying. Insta-gibs aren't really a big deal in shmups, since they basically force you to memorize the game anyway, but in terms of user experience, having them in your game is a pretty big cost, especially for a Touhou game, which prioritizes making an enjoyable experience rather than a challenging one. Scene 3-4. In this scene, we see an aimed attack with an aimed away from you attack combined. This creates a situation where you have to move constantly to dodge the aimed attack, but if you go too fast, you're going to run into the aimed away from you part. I'm working on a full video dedicated to teaching aimed shots to beginners, so if you're interested in that, please check it out when it does come out. I'll use this spell card in that video because it's a pretty good example of that concept. Straw Doll Kamikaze. Many of you might know this from Subterranean Animism. That's where I first saw it, and it threw me for a loop there. So the theme of the Stage 4 boss is she can read your mind, and she reads your partner's mind and uses your partner's Danmaku. So sort of a flashback episode. You see all the Danmaku that you've seen before. And I purposefully played the games in order, but at the time I played Subterranean Animism, I had only played the normal integer Touhou games, so I was confused by spell cards like this one, where in games that I hadn't played yet, and even Suika, I didn't know which game that character came from, and I purposefully went in order so I wouldn't miss out on anything, because I knew Touhou had a lot of lore and interconnected characters. I wanted to go through the series in order so I wouldn't miss any of that. But as it turns out, I did, because these smaller games are still important parts of Touhou continuity, and skipping over them was not ideal for someone who wanted to be in the loop. Alright, so now we get to Raisin. Raisin, in some of her spell cards, has a gimmick where she cannot be photographed at certain times. You'll see her sprite is a little fuzzy looking. If you ever see me not taking a picture when it looks like I could be, it's probably because I would expect her to be too fuzzy for the picture to work. And here, Medicine Melancholy makes her appearance. If you've played Phantasmagoria of Flower's View, you would know that these clouds of poison slow you down. I do like this gimmick in a vacuum, but I don't particularly like it in this game. Ai has many movement speeds in this game, based on whether you're focused and charging. Both of those slow you down to different degrees, and you can combine them or not. Even with all that granularity, Ai's speeds are either too fast for the uncharging unfocused, or too slow for either charging or focused. So adding a slowdown mechanic on top of already jank speed is not a good combination. Normally with the slowdown mechanics, you can unfocus to go faster because you have the benefit of the slowdown to help you dodge. But if you do that with the poison clouds, when you come out the other side, you're gonna shoot off like a rocket because Ai's top speed is very fast. So if you don't time it perfectly to start focusing again, you'll end up flying into a bullet anyway. Here we see the return of Jason's bullet moving insanity mechanic. I really like this mechanic. I think it was really well used in Perishable Night, and I think it's pretty well used here as well. Here you'll see me hold the photo for a long time. That's because I've realized I shot the photo while she was in between vulnerabilities, and I was trying to filibuster for her to become vulnerable again. And as you can see, I missed even though the picture was on top of her. Stage 5 is where this game really got difficult for me. You'll see Mei Ling's spell cards. This one took me about an hour to do, which is way longer than the previous few spell cards. A big part of that might have been I just didn't understand the strategies I needed to use at the time, but I'm noticing the game is starting to get progressively tougher from here on out. And then on this next spell card, it takes me 3 minutes and not many attempts. Here in 5-4, you'll see me charging up my shot and not taking the picture. That's because there's these walls of bullets that are circling around, and I have to time my shot to simultaneously clear a space in the wall to survive while taking a picture of Patchy. The game doesn't really make you take a bunch of defensive shots, but this is one of those times where you're sort of required to have your shots be defensive as well as offensive. A defensive shot is when you take a picture not to try to damage the boss, but to make it easier to dodge for yourself, or possible to dodge in this case. "5-5" is just a different version of 5-1, the Mei Ling spell where she kicks around the screen. I think this one's a little easier, because the bullets she spawns move faster and thus leave the screen faster, and you don't have to deal with build up as much. But it still took me a while for the same reasons, just a lot of learning a route so you know where to move Mei Ling that's most convenient for you. Spell 5-6, Satellite Himouan, is really cool. It creates these two circles and then sort of peels the bullets off. Similar with the previous Patchy spell, you have to route it a ton and time your shots so that they both damage her and allow you to pass through the walls. Just really cool design here. In this spell card, Mei Ling slowly approaches you while creating this vortex of bullets, so you have to move around the screen so she doesn't pin you up against a wall. Usually aim shots are used to force the player to move, but this is a really interesting take on it where the boss is aimed at you, not the bullets. And it still creates that situation where you have to move around and manipulate the boss. Here we have Yomu's first appearance. Yomu's slowdown mechanic appears here. In similar fashion to Medicine's mechanic, I similarly do not like it here because the way it synergizes with Aya's already janky movement speed is not really conducive to an enjoyable experience. A lot of Yomu's spell cards take a long time to do because the slowdown also slows down the charging time. There are just many spots where you're taking a much longer time between shooting photos. It's an odd pacing issue in this game. You get used to shooting photos at a certain interval. With these slowdown cards, it's usually much longer between the photos, so you wind up feeling a little bored while you're just dodging, even though the dodging is hard. And if you're ever moving unfocused, when the slowdown stops, it's the same problem where you just fly off and kill yourself. Here you have Yomu's super fast slashes, and the only times you can shoot her is if you use the slowdown from the photo to catch her while she's slashing across the screen. It's a really nice implementation of combining your slowdown with Yomu's speed, creating Danmaku designs out of the character attributes. And it sort of begs the question, who is faster, Yomu or Aya? Because they can both go really fast, as seen by this card and Aya's timeout card in Mountain of Faith, where she's too fast to be shot. Shen's homing pattern in 6-7 looks complicated, but it's deceptively simple. She alternates floor, side, side, floor, ceiling, side, side, ceiling, and then repeats back at floor. And each time she jumps, she homes in on your Y coordinate if she's jumping to a wall, and your X coordinate if she's jumping to a ceiling or floor. So it's just a matter of staying out of her way and manipulating the pattern while dodging the bullets that shoot from the walls when she lands on them. Some of the bullet patterns in the game change as you damage the boss. It's particularly noticeable here, but it's been happening for most of the game. I think for this one in particular it gets easier in the last phase than the earlier phases, so this one I struggled a bit for the first couple phases, but once I got to the final phase it didn't take me many tries. For 7.2, you'll hear the sound effect that the photo has completed charging, but I don't shoot for a while. That's because Remy cannot be photographed while she's in bat form, so this scene kind of forces an auto-scroller on you where you have to wait for her to become vulnerable, and then you can start taking pictures. Kind of a heavy-handed design in that it makes you dodge the pattern for a certain amount of time, but it would definitely be too easy to just take the pictures because you're always near Remilia while circling around. Or Zoom would just make you take more shots and it would just be harder to dodge and charge at the same time. So I think this is a fair compromise. This scene's just a reimagined vampire illusion, where instead of random, the bullets all travel in the same direction. In the menu, if you read the description of this spell card, it explains that the red bullets left behind in the wake of the knives are blood dripping off of them, which I never understood by just playing DOSD, and it explains that motif of Vermilia's in that game as well. "7.5 is one of the few cards in the game that sort of forces you to use shots as self-defense. You can spawn these rings of knives on the edges, and they won't spawn knives off screen. It's still tricky to dodge, so you're better off just being near Sakuya and timing your shots so that they save you from the knives while damaging Sakuya. You almost always have to be charging in this attack. If you stop charging for even a little bit, Sakuya will spawn knives faster than you can take photos, and you will die. This card is pure screen control. Vermilia will spawn bats, targeting you, and the bats shoot off knives, making that part of the screen more and more treacherous. You just have to move around, setting it up so that you always have a place to go. It's worth noting that the photographs kill the bats and stop the knives from spawning, but it's not worth taking a defensive photo here, because you can just always manipulate it so that you're near Amelia when you're ready to shoot and get her in the shot as well. Scene 7-7 looks simple at first glance, but there's a mechanic similar to the raisin mechanic where you can't shoot her some of the time. If Sakuya is standing still and you try to take a photo of her, she will do time stop and move out of the way. So you have to either take the photos while Sakuya is already moving and she can't do the time stop, or set it up so that when you pull out the shutter, she will have no choice but to move to somewhere where you can still shoot her. You can move the shutter after she has moved, and she won't move again, so you can still get her. You just have to be in the right position. You might notice that there won't be any sound effects in the audio for this next section. I didn't have clean audio when I recorded this. I was using my microphone and talking to chat and wasn't splitting the audio recordings, so I had to dub over this with the background music, but you won't get any sound effects, so I do apologize for that. Scene 8-3 is really interesting. These large talismans come down on the sides and spit off rows of smaller talismans, and it's RNG how long the rows are. So it gives you this interesting RNG maze to dodge through. Every once in a while it will throw something at you that could be considered a wall, but if you manage it correctly and always give yourself the most optionality, it's never really a true wall. Scene 8-4 was a difficult one for me. It took multiple sittings to do this one, and I ended up losing some of the footage, so I don't know exactly how long it took. It's a pattern with some RNG follow-up. All the lasers are aimed at you. I just didn't realize the strategy of going up and around to make some more room to dodge. In addition to the audio having to be relayed over some of these scenes, I lost my original clear because I forgot to save the original recording and Twitch lost it, so I had to redo some of these just for demonstration purposes. In scene 8-5, man shoots a set of almost complete rings of bullets at you, so you aim them at some spot and then circle around to go to the safe spot, all the while she's shooting out RNG bullets. There is a silly strat here where you hug the bottom of the screen and you can avoid the rings of bullets. I might show that off at the end. It's tough to do the whole thing that way. Eventually she gets too close and you die, but just wanted to mention it as an alternate strat. At the end of the video I might have some extra footage, some weird strats, cool dodges that didn't end up making the clear video, stuff of that nature. Here you see Yuka slowly moving up and down the screen, shooting off rings of bullets as she goes. The trick here is, the closer you are to her, the tighter the squeezes between the bullets are, but the easier it is to take the photos. So you just have to know how long to stay below her when she's moving down and then get out of the way, and how long to stay above her when she's moving up. And because she moves so slowly, and it's sort of on a cycle when you can and can't take pictures of her, purely defensive photos make a lot of sense here, so I use a few of them. This is another scene that I found uncannily tricky. Ran spawns at a random spot on the top of the screen and launches herself at you in a named burst. It seems like it'd be really simple, just screen control aiming her across the screen, but on the last couple waves she moves so fast that you need almost the entire length of the screen to stream it while you're charging, and your charging speed is too slow to properly dodge, so you have to switch in and out of it. And a lot of that is actually dependent on RNG. If she spawns on the wrong side of you, you might have to let go and move a little faster, and if she spawns on the right side, you can fully charge. The biggest problem with this scene and why it took so long was eventually you get to the point where every shot except the last one is very easy, but the last one is really hard. You end up wasting as much time as possible with each attempt, which was incredibly frustrating. You might notice that there's now an overlay. The recording of all these scenes was done over a multiple year period. It has to do with why some of the footage got lost. This scene in particular ended up causing a lot of slowdown, and a couple of the other scenes with a lot of butterflies. At that point I put this game on halt because I knew my computer couldn't handle streaming and playing this game at full speed, and it felt kind of cheap to complete some of the scenes with slowdown. But fast forward to a couple of years later, I got a new computer and I had made some updates to the stream, including making this overlay for myself. Now that my computer's been upgraded, I was able to renew the project and continue where I left off. The artwork in the overlay is not mine. I usually have a rotation of pictures, but for this game I just used the same Aya picture. The trick about this scene is it's easier to dodge at the bottom part of the screen where the bullets have spread out more and are moving slowly, and it's harder to dodge at the top where they're either moving fast or just got off of moving fast and are still bunched up together. So you have to balance going down to charge and then moving up to shoot, or just trying to stay up and shoot, because moving up the screen does become difficult. You have more optionality the higher you go, because you can always dodge down. It's deceptively complex for how simple a concept it looks like. Aaron shoots off these strings of bullets which bounce off the walls and create sort of a moving wall or set of walls. And you have to route it out such that your photos create openings in that wall so you can keep dodging. just really neat design that, similar to the comment earlier about Instagives, wouldn't be a great fit for a normal game, but because of the bullet clearing nature of the photos, it allows you to survive this pattern for longer in a way that feels natural, not like the game is forcing you to bomb. Alright, 9-6. This is supposedly one of the tougher spell cards in the game. If you check my time, you'll notice I beat it in 5 minutes. I got really lucky on this. When I went back to replay the game, it took me over a half hour to redo this one. But on my first playthrough, I didn't even realize that it was supposed to be hard. I just accidentally cleared it in 5 minutes. It's not a typo, it is just really good luck. In this scene, Aaron fills the screen with a grid of lasers that restrict your movement, and then shoots a bunch of aimed bubble bullets at you. The trick here is you need the photos to move between the different sections of the laser grid. You get a brief period where you can switch so you have more room to dodge, and you don't have the aimed bullets accumulate on you. You also want to make sure you're manipulating the bullets to bounce opposite the direction that you're going to dodge into next. So I do this by starting on the outside, inching towards the inside, and then switching, and then when you're on the other side of the screen, the outside and the inside are swapped, but you're still moving towards the inside. This is another scene with multiple chapters in it. It starts off with some aimed waves. You have to learn the pattern to manipulate them. Then she shoots these circular waves, and finally ends with RNG. The large part of this was learning the first chapter, and I thought it got easier as it went along. You'll notice for scene 10-2, I don't have an attempt number, and you'll notice the time is over 2 hours. So in this game, it doesn't actually track your attempts. For all these other scenes, I have been going through and counting them. This one, I just decided not to do it because it was way too long, and you get the gist that it took me a while. I do apologize, but I had to wuss out on this and skip counting. Alright, on this next scene, Komachi homes in on you while shooting a ring of these coin bullets, which is aimed around you. If you spin around her at the right speed, you can stay in the safe spot, and you have to maintain this while keeping Komachi from pushing you against a wall and killing you in her spiky wheel of death. 10-4 is a clinic on aimed shots. The first couple of waves are aimed directly at you and you can tap dodge them. The next couple are aimed around you with some RNG, so you have to move faster or brave the RNG. After that, there's a couple waves where you have to tap dodge because the dodging is so tight, with lasers spawning where you are and bullets being shot where your escape route is, so you have to move very tightly to avoid them. And then the final wave is much easier. I believe I cleared this the first time I got to this last chapter, because it was so much easier than the other first couple of chapters, which took a bit of learning. This scene will also be featured in the video I'm making on aimed shots, because like I said, it's a clinic in them. It's just a lot of good examples of aimed shots and some of the different kinds of aimed patterns you can implement. The design of this scene is really cool. There's two spawners orbiting around you, and they're going to spawn these coins which are going to be aimed at you. So you have to keep moving in this circular pattern to make it so that neither of them hit you. It looks really cool when you do it right. There's another way to do this where you're outside of the rings. I wasn't able to complete a run with that strat, so I would definitely recommend the one you see here. But I might show an example at the end with the other interesting strats. So right at the end of the main game, we're back with the in-game audio. Once again, sorry for that. And in this scene, looks like Aki spawns a doppelganger of Aya, and this is another one where the first couple of chapters require you to memorize the pattern and are way harder. And then the last bit is just manipulating Dark Aya to move to a certain spot and shoot this wave of bullets that's pretty easy to dodge. Now we get to the extra stage, where each of 4 extra bosses get 2 scenes apiece. This scene took me a while to do. In Touhou 6, the extra stage has a spell card called Counterclock with these spinning laser wheels. In that game, the lasers don't fully spawn right away, so you can just squeeze through them, and you don't have to really learn how to dodge around them. In this game, they are always fully spawned, so it took me a while to actually learn how to dodge around them and manipulate them. These extra scenes were also an instance where I lost my original clears and had to redo them, so I don't have any of the documentation for how long it took. Border of Wave and Particle is another spell card that I knew from Subterranean Animism that I was supposed to learn here first. Extra Stage 5. Don't remember much about this one, except it was pretty quick. Much easier than the rest of the extra stages. It's pretty simple, actually. You also might hear the audio sound a little weird. This is actually how it sounds in the game, where it's panning the audio to part of the screen where Moko is spawning the bullets. It's a nice effect, though it might be overdone here. Extra 6 is just an aimed spell card. In a previous Games Done Quick, the runner who speedran this game did an incentive to do this spell card blindfolded, and the reason it's possible is because all you have to do is tap dodge. That being said, I was not able to tap dodge it the same way using my eyes, so it's definitely impressive to do nonetheless, but that's sort of the trade secret behind doing that blindfolded is you don't really have to look where you're going, you just have to tap in a certain rhythm. Extra 7. In this spell card you can't shoot Suika until she materializes, which doesn't happen for a good long while. So you're left doing screen control early on, just manipulating Suika's cloud so it doesn't cover very much of the screen, and then using a defensive shot to clear out that small section that you covered in bullets. And just generally trying to contain it. Towards the end, Suika will materialize and you can shoot her before going back into the holding pattern of trying to keep the screen under control. I should mention that this final scene and the one before it both show up in Subterranean Animism as well as Suika's Danmaku, along with one of her fighting game patterns. It's not too much mechanic-wise going on with this one. I just wanted to thank everyone who watched the video and got this far. Make sure to like the video if you like it, dislike the video if you dislike it. I'm always looking for feedback in the comments, especially comments about my commentary. Did people like it? Did people wish I'd just play the videos? And let me know if you want me to make more of these, for a double spoiler or impossible spell card, for instance. And if I do end up playing those games, I will play them live right here on my YouTube channel and at twitch.tv/Zemoo Games. So feel free to follow those channels and you'll know when I'm playing and can watch me live. If you want to see some of the interesting strats that didn't end up working, close dodges, and other extra outtakes and whatnot, keep watching. But with that, thank you for watching, and I'll sign off now.
Oh, cool.